Hello, and welcome back to the workshop. Ask any number of beekeepers to list reasons why they keep bees, and I bet you will find somewhere on everyone's list the joy of harvesting honey. Honey is unique. There's nothing else that even comes close. And if you want the real thing, then the best place to get it is from a beekeeper, or better yet, from your own bees. If you harvest honey, then sooner or later, probably sooner, you will be considering a honey extractor. These are great machines, and well worth the price. And if you get a honey extractor, then you'll need a stand to put it on. And that is today's project, building a honey extractor stand in the Beekeeper's workshop. While shopping around for honey extractors, I noticed catalogs offering a metal stand to go with them. It is a good idea. The small, narrow-based extractor stands in the catalogs, and those I saw at conference vendor displays, struck me as being adequate, but perhaps something that just might able to be improved upon. After buying my extractor and electric 6-frame radio, I retreated to the workshop and started building my own version of an extractor stand. It was a fun project. It only took a few hours, and the extractor stand that I came up with has stood the test of time and has served me well. An extractor stand needs to be rugged. It will take a lot of abuse. When an extractor is fired up, it will often do the well-known extractor dance with a whole lot of shaking going on. This is because the frames are slightly out of balance. When the dance begins, the extractor can shimmy and shake all over the dance floor. The one we are looking at is decidedly docile. It can get much, much worse. I've had my extractor dance right out the door. Literally. I have also had my extractor leave its dance partner, the 5-gallon bucket, used to collect honey draining out of the extractor. I was decapping frames getting ready for the next batch. I wasn't paying attention to current events, and by the time I was, the extractor had left the bucket far behind. Honey was pouring out of the extractor and running all over the place. It was a mess, but a good lesson. Honey extractors also tend to be top-heavy, and on a narrow stand can be at risk of tipping over. You can easily have 20 or 30 pounds of honey spinning around in the extractor basket. Combine that with the extractor dance and the narrow base of commercial extractor stands, and you have a good recipe for a honey house drama which you really don't need. So I wanted the stand that I built to solve all three of these problems. 1, the stand had to be strong and hold together. 2, I wanted the bucket to be part of the stand so that the two dash partners would stay together. And 3, I also wanted a good, stable base so that there was no chance of the whole thing tipping over. Let's take a quick look at what we came up with. The first obvious thing we see is the extractor stand has a large plywood base, roughly 2 feet wide and 3 feet long. This large base eliminates any risk of the extractor tipping over. The base is also big enough to hold both the stand and to provide a place to put a honey bucket. With the addition of a few cleats on the base, the bucket will stay with the extractor no matter where this thing may wander when spinning out an uneven load of honey. The second obvious thing we see is that the stand itself is made from 2x4s and is quite stout. 4 legs, 3 tall ones on 2 sides and 1 in the back, and a shorter one in front, hold the shelf at a convenient working height and provide 2 anchor points that will securely hold the extractor to the stand. The extractor I bought is 18 inches in diameter. In this video, the dimensions provided are for an extractor of this size, though the stand should work equally as well for a 14-inch diameter extractor. Some larger extractors run in the neighborhood of 24 inches in diameter, and scaling up the size of the stand in this project should be straightforward. So, if you need a stand for a bigger extractor, I will leave the details to you. Now let's take a closer look at the dimensions for today's project. The base is simply a small sheet of 1/2-inch plywood that is 26 inches wide and 34 inches long. Several small cleats toward the front will keep the bucket from sliding off the base. The stand itself is constructed from 2x4s. The back and two side legs are 31 inches long. The leg in front, which supports the front of the shelf, is 19.5 inches. The shelf is also made from 2x4 stock. The shelf is 19 inches wide, which is 1 inch wider than the diameter of the extractor, and 15 inches deep, which is 3 inches less than the diameter of the extractor. This narrower depth allows the extractor's honey gate to overhang the edge of the shelf so that you can drain the honey into a bucket stationed below. The bottom of the shelf is positioned 16 inches above the base, which puts the top at 19.5 inches. This height keeps the top of the extractor at a convenient working height and provides enough room to fit a standard 5-gallon bucket under the extractor. Finally, some turnbuckle hardware securely straps the extractor to the stand so the two will never part. And a small strip of carpet pads the inside of the legs and keeps the extractor from rubbing up against the 2x4s. Now that we have that out of the way, it is time to get things going. I'll start first by making the 2x4 shelf for the stand. The shelf is made from a 2x4. Cut 2 pieces 19 inches long and 2 pieces 12 inches long. Then assemble the pieces into a simple box. Nothing fancy here. Glue and clamp the 4 pieces together, checking for square. Use 2 3-inch drywall screws on each corner of the shelf. This keeps everything tight while the glue sets up. From a scrap piece of hardboard, sometimes sold as tempered masonite, cut a small piece 15 inches by 18 3/4 inches. This hardboard will simply sit on top of the shelf's frame and does not need to be attached. For the legs, we again use 2x4s. We need 3 pieces cut 31 inches long and 1 piece cut 19.5 inches long. The 3 long legs will be mounted on the outside of the shelf's frame, and the front leg, the shorter one, will be mounted on the inside of the frame. When attaching the legs to the shelf, you should take care to make sure the stand won't wobble once everything is put together. I find that working with the 2x4 legs can be somewhat awkward and a challenge to get the legs attached at the proper length and square to the shelf. So here's a shop tip that will make this job a lot easier and, more importantly, accurate. The idea is to temporarily attach a cross brace at the proper height and square to the leg. We can then place the shelf against the brace, center the leg, and then glue and screw the shelf to the leg. Once we are done, we can simply remove the cross brace and the job is done. I start first by striking a line 16 inches up from the bottom of each leg. This marks the bottom of the shelf. Tack a short piece of scrap wood across the leg at the 16-inch reference line we just made. Be sure the cross piece is square to the leg and exactly on the reference line. Next, mark the center area on the side of the shelf where the leg will attach and drill 4 1/8-inch pilot holes for the screws. Now apply a generous layer of glue on the leg above the cross brace and on the matching area of the side of the shelf. Remember, the 2 side legs and the back leg will mount on the outside of the shelf, and the front leg will mount on the inside of the shelf. Position the shelf tight up against the cross brace, make sure the leg is centered, and then screw the leg to the shelf using 2.5-inch deck screws. Repeat these steps for each of the 4 legs. If you want, you can check your work with a level, but if you have tacked the cross brace anywhere close to the 16-inch mark, then you should be good to go. Finally, remove the cross braces, clean up the glue, and this job is done. We can now make the base. It is simply a rectangular piece of 1/2-inch plywood, or OSB, a type of inexpensive plywood. I used OSB. The base is 26 inches wide and 34 inches long. Nothing complicated here either. This is a good point to paint the stand if you're going to do it at all. I kind of like to paint my stuff because, well, it just looks better and makes cleaning up a bit easier. Next, we can attach the stand to the base. We are going to screw the base to the legs from the bottom up. Plywood and OSB usually has a good side and a not so good side. I prefer to have the good side facing up. Decide which is which and put the extractor base on your workbench, good side up. Place the stand centered toward the back of the base. Position it so that the back leg is 2 inches in from the back edge of the base and the 2 side legs are 2 inches in from the sides. Then trace around each leg where it sits on the base. Remember, we are going to screw the legs to the base from the bottom up. So when we turn everything upside down, we want to make sure that the legs will be in the right spot. Just as we used a temporary brace to help position the legs to the shelf, we can do a similar thing when attaching the stand to the base. Take a short piece of scrap wood and tack it to the base, snug up against the outside of the side leg. And then another short piece snug up against the front of the side leg. And do the same thing to the other side. Finally, tack a short piece up against the front of the rear leg. Now we can use these temporary cleats to reposition the base to the legs exactly where we want it to be. Remove the base and drill 2 1/8-inch pilot holes in each of the traced locations. This is where we will screw the legs of the stand to the base from the bottom up. Now turn everything upside down. Set the stand on the floor, top side down. Generously coat the bottom of the legs with glue, and then place the base on the stand using the temporary cleats to position the base on the legs. Screw the whole shebang together using 2-inch drywall screws. After the glue sets up, this assembly should be solid as a rock. Short cleats, glued and screwed or nailed to the base, will keep the bucket from sliding around. These cleats don't need to be fancy. A cleat 3/4 inch wide and about 8 inches long, cut from a scrap piece of 1x4, will do just fine. You will need about 2 or 3 of them. Put your extractor on the stand, position a bucket under the extractor's honey gate about where you want it, and then attach the cleats, giving yourself about 1 inch of clearance between the cleats and the bottom of the bucket. Most of the extractors that I have seen come with a metal bracket of some sort that is mounted on the top of the extractor. At least the extractors from Dedant have this feature. This bracket is used to secure the extractor to the stand. To anchor the stand, we are going to install a 3-inch screw hook on the front of both side legs. Drill a 1/4 inch pilot hole near the top of the leg about 1 inch down from the top. Notice that I'm drilling the pilot hole down at an angle to keep the back of the hook tight up against the leg. A 4-inch turnbuckle and a 2-inch S-hook completes the hardware. When both turnbuckles are tightened up, the extractor will be securely held to the stand with no possibility of the two going separate ways. A nice touch to finish this project is to staple a small strip of carpet, say about 2 inches wide and 10 inches long, to the inside of the 3 support legs above the shelf. These pads will keep the extractor from rubbing up against the legs while running, as well as during storage. Well, there you have it. A few hours in the shop and you will have an extractor stand that is every bit as good as a commercial one, and in my opinion, probably better. Do yourself a favor and consider a honey extractor. Or get your local bee club to buy one to share, and then make an extractor stand and donate it to your club. The bees are generous as to what they give. It is only right that we pass it on. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for all of the positive comments we get. We have more projects in mind, so we hope you will join us again in the Beekeeper's Workshop.